Welcome to the Action Item Podcast. Meet your hosts, Trevor Hunter and Leo Lopez, and at the end of each show, you'll get a simple action item that you can put in play today to make a real impact on your business.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Action Item Podcast.
Welcome back.
Yeah, we took a week off for Leo and then a week off for me. Both had vacations back to back. I had fun. I actually got my sleep schedule back to normal. I don't know if I've ever talked about that. I'm sure I've talked about my crazy sleep schedule with you, Leo.
Yep.
But I'm actually getting like 7 hours all in one stretch the past week. So
I got to tell you, in kind of the hustle culture of yesteryear, right? I think nowadays people are more convinced now that, of course, doing some personal, health time, mental health time away is part of the work that you're putting in. And so I think, I don't take time off very often, but when I do, it's all or nothing. And I think that, I absolutely recommend to anybody that hasn't had some time in a while, do it. You will come back to the workspace so much fresher, so much recharged. Your output will be so much better. So
absolutely. And this was the first time in 22 years that I actually was able to walk away from the business for a week. Everything still functioned the way it's supposed to work while I was gone, and I think I had a call with you once and one other phone call during the entire time, and came back to not disaster.
It's great.
It's
the way it should
never
be.
happened before.
It's great.
And to be fair, I probably could have done that earlier. I've just always been scared to do so. But yeah, today we're diving into a topic that every business owner faces eventually: difficult customers. But rather than trying to just manage those customers, we're going to get a bit strategic. If your business relies on long-term relationships, taking on every single customer may not always be the best move. Not every client's a good fit, and sometimes it's smarter to walk away than to even start. So my approach is a bit different than Leo's. Leo has a different perspective, or a different set of expertise, so to speak. But my approach is about qualifying clients before the project even gets started. So I've learned over time that not every client's worth the time and energy, or headaches. So the key is to filter out those who might become problems down the road, making sure that their expectations align with what we can actually deliver. So our process is that we start off with a short phone call. This first connection is where they've reached out to me or we've crossed paths some other way, and it's a quick, just initial kind of feeling them out a little bit. It's a chance for me to gauge whether or not we're in the same ballpark. So from that point, we move on to an official discovery call, and this is where I dig down pretty deep, uncover what their real needs are, what their goals are, their budget, their expectations, and what hurdles they actually have. This call is extremely critical because it tells me whether their expectations match what we can do for them, and if they can even be helped. There's a lot of times, we turn down as much, if not more, than we're able to accept because some businesses just can't be helped. Not for the money that they have to spend and so forth. So after that discovery call, if everything lines up, we move forward, create a very detailed proposal. Now, this is an important bit of the process that a lot of folks skip out on.
Now, you know what? Before you jump into the proposal, and I'm hearing you loud and clear, the difficult clients, these are the folks that things can go south. They either won't pay, they could be, difficult or demanding or expecting the impossible. It could be cultural, or it could be just kind of in their mannerisms and in the way they treat you. Now, this is probably more relevant to those of you who are kind of solopreneurs or in small businesses and depend on clients, versus consumers, where it's a little bit more difficult to pre-qualify direct to consumer stores, that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
there are
my approach is definitely for the people that I get a new client and I'm going to work with that guy for the next 10 years.
Your a service-oriented business, it can be, again, a variety of different types of services that you offer. But, it's tough because you mentioned refusing the business. And I don't know if a lot of people have even thought of this as an option. I'll tell you why, because it is, those of us in the service industry know every client that we get is a golden opportunity, is profit, is revenue. And especially when we're struggling to get leads, the last thing we want to do is, get a business opportunity only to kind of come back and refuse it. What are your thoughts on kind of balancing or reconciling that, right? Like, I'm gonna push away a client that I worked hard to get with my marketing or referrals or whatever I did to get, and I'm pushing away that possible opportunity or revenue.
Well, we work with people for a long time. You and I started working together on Calltastic 3 years ago or something. And you're actually one of the newer clients that I have. So when you have that longevity, you kind of have to like the people you're working with. And to be fair, early on, those decisions were not made in the same way. I would take on projects that probably had all kinds of red flags just to pay the bills. And that's just the way that is, Yep. You've got to do it. And I don't really know how you reconcile that. If you need to pay the bills, you take the client on. That's the reality of it, they might be a nightmare, but can you afford to not take them? And I guess that's a financial decision at that point.
Well, you bring up a good point, and I think in all fairness, it's a balance, right? Because if you're in a situation where you're desperate for the business, you kind of beggars can't be choosers, versus if you're in a situation where you're okay, you might have better flexibility. But I would argue that if you take on that client that you're getting bad vibes from, or that you aren't connecting with, I feel like it's a ticking time bomb, and it may end up costing you more than had you never received their business in the first place, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I actually have never even shared this example. Many years ago, had a guy, this is back when I had all the screen print shops and everything, and he called and he wanted screen printing, a website. It was a substantial order. It was like $14,000 worth of stuff. It was a website and a bunch of t-shirts and hats and basically everything that he needed. And everything had staggered delivery dates. The website was done first because we do websites really fast. And basically I was able to start his website like immediately. And we needed the work back then. We collected the payment right out of the gate. And this is when I was still using PayPal. This is why I don't use PayPal anymore. After we got the website done, he was ecstatically happy. I think the website was $5,200 or something like that. Over the moon happy. Left reviews, did everything positive. And we're not talking about a long time. Like, we took the website, we did it in a week, and he was happy in a week. His t-shirts arrived. We went into the print process, ran into a few snags. His shirts were supposed to ship on like the following Friday. And that's what we told him. They were going to ship on Friday, but there was some issues with the shop, and they didn't ship out until Tuesday. So we're talking a weekend and 2 days. He got the shirts, and they were fine. They were good. He did a chargeback on me for the full amount of everything. And he got approved. Like, he got it passed through.
Wow.
And there was a couple red flags that I now know to look out for. He didn't care about what he spent. It didn't seem like he cared at all. And now, looking back, I know I can tell the difference between someone who has a big enough business where they genuinely just want quality work and they're not really worried about the budget, and where people, and the difference of this guy knew he wasn't going to ultimately pay, so it didn't matter what he spent.
Yep.
So PayPal refunded him, debited my account for the difference, and I went back and forth with PayPal like 3 times, and I actually got approved on the appeal, and then he claimed it back again, and they took out another $14,000 out of my bank, which is an interesting bit. I may leave this in, I may not, but they never gave back the first 14.
Jeez.
When they did the appeal, when they gave me the appeal, they never gave me back the first 14. When he contested the appeal, they took another 14 from me, and my account was 28 down from that deal.
Wow.
And that was 7, 8, 9 years ago, and never. I mean, I spent a year trying to reclaim that. Never got it sorted out.
What was the red flag you say that you think you missed? You mentioned something about that.
His complete lack of care about how much everything cost. He didn't seem to care at all. And at the time, I just took it as, well, this guy's loaded. He knows what he wants, and that's what it was. And in retrospect, I noticed that probably would have, today I think I would have noticed something. I don't know. But yeah, it was just a pure scam. It wasn't a bad client. It was a bad client, but it wasn't like a difficult client.
Yeah.
It was just a scam artist, you know?
Yep.
So I don't know if that answers, but as far as how to handle that better, I don't know. I mean, it is hard. You've got to collect money up front if at all possible. 2, you've got to make sure that that you can deliver what they want. And if you can't, if you go into the project knowing that they expect something that you cannot do, it's far better to walk away and not take that little influx of capital and be left with a nightmare that's going to give you a bad reputation or a bad Google review or whatever down the road that's going to be the nightmare. And I think that goes to your point of what you're saying, that it would be more trouble than it's worth.
Well, and, I think that this actually takes us, and the answer simply is, we can't control the scam artists, the deviations, the irate customer. That's outside of our control. We cannot control that. That can happen, and you can screen somebody to death. At some point, things can happen that you didn't expect. We don't, never. Nobody ever really knows anybody. But as you were saying, this is where the clarity in setting the right expectations and starting with an outline or a contract. And I think this is what you mentioned is like, get it into a writing format, ideally where you can set those expectations or where you have complete clarity, where that will support you in it, just in case things go south, right?
Yeah. So that's a huge part of everything I advise my clients is the paperwork side of things, because so many miss that one. That's such a huge deal. Let me dive back into the proposal part of my process.
Absolutely.
The proposal, it is very detailed. I know that everybody wants to do a quick 1-page proposal, and they feel like that's going to, keep their interest. But the proposal is not. I say this I'm going to get disagreed with, but this proposal is a selling tool, but it's not. It's a place where you lay all the expectations of what you're going to do for them. And if that needs to be 9 pages, then it's 9 pages. If you don't cut something out and make it a 2-page to make it more salesy, so it explains what you'll do, how you'll do it, the timeline, the payment terms, and then for small projects, we charge everything up front. We charge the full payment up front for small projects. For larger projects, I do the half payment up front, milestone, and then at the end of it, there'll be another payment. And believe it or not, that upfront payment or upfront deposit mitigates a ton of the problems.
Yeah. I think, sorry to interrupt you, but you said that whether the proposal is a selling tool or not. I mean, I think it's both. I think it's still a selling tool, but it's also serves the purpose of solidifying the expectations, right? And I completely agree with you. I think it's detailed. I think one thing people can also do, and if you're like me, I have a short attention span, so I don't want to sit there and look at a 15-page service agreement. So I think a good place to start, and again, maybe I should obviously, but is maybe having a summary of your proposal, like or contents, like here's where it is, or listen, here's the key points, deposit, blah 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 blah. These are next steps. Here's the detailed proposal. That way, there's kind of the best of both worlds. So if they just scan through your email or a cover page, they're being told the key points they need to understand and expectations, and then they obviously have the full details, and then it's bulletproof right at that point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, literally what you just said is exactly how we build proposals for clients. We have an objective and then a summary, and the summary is exactly that. It summarizes what's the next however many pages there are. Then you have the technical details, and it lists the each technical item that'll be on there. And then you get into each section, the detailed bits about each section, and then terms and conditions, payment terms, and so forth. But yeah, you can read the objective, which I try to keep to about yay much on a page, and a summary, and get a pretty solid gist of what it is. Whether you choose to read the other 8 pages, I mean, that's up to you. That's your responsibility. You should. I got a story real quick. There's a girl that I know that went and had a transmission repaired and picked it up, signed some paperwork. After the work was done, signed the paperwork, took the car home. It had a transmission replaced with a brand new transmission. She had a warranty with the transmission. She signed it. Transmission gave up like a week later. It was just it was a bad transmission from the factory. They're wanting $1,500 to repair it, or for the labor. The transmission is warranted, but not the labor. And I asked her to show me the paperwork she signed, and she showed me, and I found the line. It clearly says it. What she signed, it literally agrees that she's agreeing that the warranty only covers the parts, that she has to pay labor again. I was like, that is what it is. But she had no idea. She did not read what she was signing.
Yeah, I mean, we got to read the fine print.
You have to. And it's a tedious thing, but it's so important, man.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's pretty much my process. It's pre-qualification and not being afraid to walk away from a deal if it's not right. And I've structured things to filter out potential problems before they arise. So for me, it's all about ensuring that I take on the right people, or the right clients, so to speak. So essentially, it's set up for success from the start. And to be fair, I don't think I've had a bad run-in with a client in a lot of years. I can't remember the last time. So it does work. But Leo has a totally different thing because he handles shorter. He actually is the expert on customer service, and that's the more short. What do you call that, Leo? Anyways, I'll pass it over to you and let you do your thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, look, my experience is in the call center customer service industry, and generally those are independent, contacts or engagements with customers, usually consumer. I've also done business to business, but whether it's business to business, consumer services, the customer service fundamentals still apply. They are universal. Courteousness, professionalism, attention to detail, all of those types of things are listening to your customer is all part of customer service, whether it's you have a major client and a multi-million-dollar deal, or whether you have somebody buying candy at your store. I think it's, again, those principles remain the same. I think that there are ways that I want to talk about in terms of okay, so we did our pre-qualification and we did our proposal, and now we're in bed together, and things are starting to go south now. Now I have a client who's belligerent. So we're going to talk a little bit about de-escalating those types of situations and what to do. So I think first and foremost, if you've reached a point where you've delivered your services, or you have a client that is coming back and either disputing or refusing to pay, or still paying but simply complaining that they had a horrible experience. Could be reviews or could be directly in your face. They are belligerent, they are angry, they are upset, they may not be reasonable, they may be using profanity. So there's a way to try to mitigate that situation and bring the client back down to earth to try to work out a solution. And so I think the key point number one is take the heat, HEAT. And I think we could probably put that on our website if anybody wants to download it. I can give you a copy for uploading, Trevor. But ultimately, it's been in the industry for decades. I mean, I was trained this way in like the early 90s or late 1900s, as my children say. But, taking the heat is, first of all, hearing them out. And that's the H, right? I can't tell you how many times I go to a store or I interact with somebody, professional or otherwise, that if I've got a concern, they cut me off. And sometimes it's not a bad intention. It's just like, they just, okay, let me try to solve this for you. It's like, listen, hear them out. And especially if they're belligerent or angry, the last thing you want to do is interrupt them. Let them get it off their chest. If that takes 5 minutes, if that takes 15 minutes, hear them out. It goes a long way. And I will tell you, somebody may leave unhappy, somebody may not be your biggest fan, but hearing them out is, a big step of, towards trying to solve things and trying to leave with a reasonable, I think, reputation from this person. So, but hearing them out. The E of take the heat is empathy. And it's not just kind of the disingenuine, I'm so sorry that you're frustrated, kind of thing. I think it's making sure that you truly, truly convey to your customer after you have heard them out, Trevor, I've heard your points. This is what I'm hearing and understanding, and I know that this was not the experience that you were looking for. And, recognizing that, empathizing, or even go as far as saying, I don't think I would be a fan of this experience either, gives you essentially at least an opportunity to convey to the client that you hear them and that you empathize with them, that they're not just another cog. The third part is the A of take the heat, and that's to apologize. And again, so you've heard them out, you've conveyed that you understand their frustrations and that you would feel the same way in their situation. And I think the next step is to really genuinely apologize and say, listen, I am really, truly sorry that things came to this. Again, it's very short, doesn't have to be long. Again, it has to be genuine, right? Not just, I'm so sorry. Like, I am really sorry that it came to this. I am so sorry that, we're ruining your day. Then the last part of take the heat is taking responsibility and taking action. Taking the heat is something that I've practiced, whether I'm de-escalating a situation where I have a customer whose shipment has been delayed and it was for a birthday party and they're really upset, all the way to a multi-million dollar contract where I have a customer. And in fact, I'll bring this up just recently. This kind of ties really well into what we're talking about. We just recently onboarded a client, and our services are a little different than traditional services in this space. I won't get too much into that, but the bottom line is usually you fund your account first. We build out the operations for you, as opposed to invoicing you and then you pay after. And so this client missed every line item of our proposal, missed the call for onboarding. Basically, this is the CEO, and missed all of the communications around how we work, and assumed that we were just going to bill them the same way their current partner bills them. And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. And he was coming back with, you are making it really difficult to work for, with your business, Leo. Like, my current partner bills me this way. I don't know why you guys do it this way. This is news to me. And, we had a big email exchange. The same practices. Obviously I read through what he had to say. And I said, I appreciate his frustration. I told him that, I empathized. And I said, look, I know we are new in our partnership and we're getting off the right foot. And that's deeply concerning to me that you feel this way. And then, in through the course of taking the heat, I did apologize, but I also took action. And my action was, I reassured him that we were pretty transparent from the beginning, but I didn't dwell on that. Remember, this whole thing about the customer is always right. I'm not going to get into right or wrong here. It's not even about right or wrong. At this point, I am just sidestepping the whole thing and recognizing and just reassuring him that we were very transparent with our process. Sorry he feels this way, but, here's what we can do. We've already started operations. We will continue recruiting. We can give you some more time to submit your payment. And, and we worked it out. And we worked it out because this partnership is new. It's significant revenue potential for us. And in this specific case, I think that the client, I realized at this point, early in our partnership, that this is the individual who doesn't read the fine print. This is your friend who gets the transmission and then, didn't know this kind of thing. And I think that, and oftentimes, with executives, I feel like, the higher you go, right, to CEOs and stuff, the dumber we get. It's like, these are the details. This is the inattention to detail it's part of a dysfunction there. So bottom line, I think, is taking the heat can go a long way in de-escalating a variety of situations, small, large, whatever is at stake.
Well, now, hold on. To cut in for a second. Okay, so you de-escalated, you took the heat. Will you now change your qualification process and in the early stages of the discovery and that kind of thing? I know you put that in your proposal, but will you change anything now to make that payment process a bit more obvious?
Absolutely. I think that, and I will be completely transparent with everybody here. Business opportunities in the current economy, war that's happening around the world, inflation, everything, the opportunities have become fewer and far between. And so I think part of the reason this happened is there was a rush to get into operations, because once we're operationally live, that's where we're generating revenue. And so I think there were some corners that were cut. I mean, I think we have a pretty reasonable process, but I think where we failed was we didn't hold ourselves to our own process and say, listen, I can't start recruiting until we have a conversation and we review the service agreement. And actually putting a hard stop on that. So there was definitely some lessons learned. I think there's definitely opportunities where I want to make it a little bit easier. I mean, even if it's like an explainer video that's 60 seconds that hits all the key things that someone like my client could breeze through and be educated at least, right? I think So we're going to look at ways to do that, but you're right. I think there's definitely opportunities to look at how we do onboarding, orientation, and set the right expectations.
It's a bit ironic if you think about it, and I've been in not in the same scenario, but in similar situations. You're in a hurry to make money or to get the money like locked in and the deal done.
Yep.
So you skip processes, and because you did that, it actually almost cost you the money that you were trying to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
we could do a whole episode on sticking to the process and never deviating, because it works. We build process, like your process now changed a little bit. You now have another step because you experienced something new, and now you're going to take that nugget and put it over here into your process, and that will be there for the next 20 years or 30 years or 40 or whatever.
I think to your point about process and sticking to it, I think there's always going to have to be a certain level of flexibility in business. We know that. And we know that
of course.
We know that a board that's stiff is going to break. It needs to be able to bend. However, I do think that there is a room for kind of the non-negotiables. And I think that we can flex on the terms of invoicing. We can flex on payment methods. We can flex on just about every aspect of the solution, but we need to stand our ground in certain boundaries where we say, the one thing I can't really do for you is launch without XYZ. Like, this is it. Everything else I can help you with, but I can't do this without that. I've had a couple of scenarios where we've onboarded a new client, and very early on in the partnership, it's become apparent that they have a very specific approach in their corporate culture that does not work well with ours, and specifically,
like the guy that was constantly berating.
Absolutely. I mean, look.
Yeah, in your emails.
These are the clients that always under, veil of threat. If you don't perform, I'm going to shut down the program. They kind of like this, what as toxic leadership. And, and if this is your leadership style, screw you. But, berating people, talking down to my leaders, telling me your leaders have no idea what they're doing. Or, I don't know where you guys are, this is amateur hour. I'm getting bullshit. Like, very accusatory, very aggressive, kind of very hostile. And, at first I just kind of did my take the heat, at a certain point though, it was getting to the point where my leadership is like, these guys are out of control. And I finally took a step and I said, look, I sent an email, and as diplomatically and as professionally as I could, basically brought them a ultimatum, very professionally. And essentially what I said was, we understand that you have a way of managing. Cultastic understands the mission. We don't need to be reminded under threat that if we don't perform or deliver, that you'll go to someone else. That is always your choice. We don't need to be spurred into action, and kind of explaining our culture is of a sense of urgency, of a commitment to our clients, and of commitment to perform and drive results. We don't need this sort of management. And my ultimatum was simply this: if this is your corporate culture and this is where you work best, then this is not the partnership for you. And I think if you would like to withdraw, we are okay at this point parting ways. If you believe that there's an opportunity to continue working together and you are comfortable adapting to our approach, or meeting us somewhere in there, then, something to the effect of, if you stop doing that bullshit and not so many words, then we're happy to continue our partnership. So in other words, listen, this is what we're getting and we don't need your shit, and in a very professional manner. But, you're welcome to go find someone else, and we'll work. We'll even help transition, and we even offer to help find you another provider within our network. Or we're happy to give this another shot. And, there's been maybe 2 or 3 times that I've had to do this, and it's so...
Well, no, I'm sorry to cut you off, but if I remember right, we've talked about this particular situation, and it was a night and day. He turned his shit around and got...
a puppy. They turned into a puppy. Like, literally went from, your team doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and I don't know. I signed this contract with you thinking that you guys were going to be different. To, hey Leo, I'm so sorry that this was not our intention, and I'm just like, who is this person that's replying?
And it's maintained that.
And you know what though, I got to tell you, we've had long-term partnerships that way, and with this individual, and I think where it comes from is the other providers they've worked with just didn't respond to a profession. Like, they only responded to something drastic, and that does exist, especially in the offshore world. There are certain ethnic cultures and corporate cultures that really don't have a sense of urgency as high, and only respond under threats or ultimatums, or this kind of drill sergeant approach, and and that's not us, right? So
Makes sense.
Again, so yeah, I think not being afraid to part ways. We did terminate a client. I did have one client where we actually didn't give them the ultimatum. We just basically said we're going to sever the partnership at this point. And again, always very professional, always offering additional support, no matter how much I wanted to strangle these people and just part ways. So the balance really, and this is purely a judgment call, it's about what is good for your business, and what is the balance between what's good for your business and what's good for the client experience, and trying to find a good level of balance between those two things, right? And so at the end, that's what customer service is at a core. But if I have a client who's doing X, and this is at a detriment, and it's not just financial, right? It could be emotional detriment. No, it's not worth not sleeping. It's not worth indigestion. It's not worth stress and anxiety to support a client who talks down to you. Again, at least me and as an individual, there's no amount of money in the world you could pay me to put up with that. Like, I will eat out of a garbage can before I put up with that. So, and again,
that may be why I spend so much time on the qualification process.
Yes.
Is because I am absolutely not built to handle
abuse.
the take the heat part.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of. Okay, so when you were describing the take the heat part, it's kind of funny because I feel like that does transcend business. Like, I feel like I deal with my 10-year-old like that.
My wife.
I don't have one of those and never will, but
smart man.
Yeah, I do the I go through those steps with my 10-year-old. But yeah, so I think that transcends, but I'm not built for that as the abuse part of it. So I do the qualification thing because I'll tell them to get bent.
Yeah.
Like if they're, if we're not a good fit, we're not a good fit. I'm not going to say get bent, but I don't recall a client that we've had to part ways with. I'm sure it's happened at some point in the last 20-something years, but I don't remember one that we've had to part ways with late in the project. Like, very, very early, like, there was some very early, I can remember a couple that we've had to, like, refund immediately because we realized that, this is not the right fit. But I'll tell you something else, though, the interesting thing about walking away. When you go through that discovery process and you build everything up and you've got this proposal out and something happens and you realize that they're not the right fit for your business, and you politely tell them, I just don't see this being a good fit, and I don't think this is right for us at this time. A lot of the time, they come back heavy. Like, oh, why? What can we do? How can we... They come in and are...
Reverse psychology. I don't want your business, right? And then it's like, wait, I want to give you my business.
Well, it's not that, because I guess you probably could abuse that, but it was never that. But then they come back to the table with a better mindset, and occasionally we come to terms and end up, in a nice relationship. But
it's interesting. That's interesting. It's almost like it's funny. I've heard some people say it's called kind of the velvet rope effect. Yep. Somebody once told me, I don't know if I agree with this 100%. I think there is some truth to it, but they're like, look, executives, business people, we have egos. There's an ego there. And if you try to beg someone to look at your pitch, chances are they're not interested. But if you come back and say, I have something that's invitation only and that you qualify for and that you have to apply for before we'll consider doing business for you, there are some people that seem to respond to, well, why wouldn't they work with me, kind of thing. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's certain individuals where that type of, approach works. And I've seen it where it's like, we only work exclusively with these types of clients kind of thing. And, contact us to see if you qualify. I mean, I don't know that I would ever go that far. But yeah, so it's interesting.
I can tell you for sure. I mean, because we genuinely do have a process kind of like that. And it is, our process is actually genuinely that way. If I knew what I know today, I would have done that process many years ago because I see what it can do. And I don't know if it's because we're better known or whatever. But I don't know if it would have worked 10 years ago, but I would have tried it 10 years ago if I had known it was a thing.
Yep. Makes sense.
Are we ready to jump into this week's action item?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So this week's action item is a two-part deal. It's to implement your own pre-qualification process, whatever that means for your business. Get something down on paper, identify a qualifier, something specific that can help you filter out the types of customers or clients that you'd rather not work with. It could be a question that you ask, a field on your contact form, or something you incorporate verbally into your discovery call. The key is to integrate that qualifier into your process so that you can identify the potential problem clients early on. And you have the take the heat is your aspect of that. Can you explain that briefly?
The taking the heat is basically, and I can give you the template so we can share it with our audience. Is the hear them out, empathize, apologize, and take responsibility if situations have gone south with the client, right? And that's kind of, again, taking the heat if you do end up in a situation where you need to.
All right, so that part will be the form that we have, or a document that we have on the website. The link will be in the description.
But I think the auction item, and I've seen this example with other service companies. Like there's a plumber who you have to be the property owner, or they can't come. Like, I can't help you. I'm sorry if you're a tenant, unless it's a certain, it's a clog or something. But if it's major work, digging up yards, like they're like, we need to work with the landlord kind of thing. That's one example. I mean, there's a lot of different examples. It's
we have a document in our legal kit that we give to that we work with clients with. That is literally that document. It's a landowner approval, or it's something that if somebody is not the landowner but they're leasing the land or renting the land, they can have the landowner sign and give permission. I mean, that's a huge deal.
Yep. So there's ways to just sit down and think. Obviously, this is my ideal client profile. Maybe think about situations where you've had a client that's less ideal, and maybe what are those aspects. And I think go back to your pre-qualification process. I think after this recent experience, we're certainly going back to our proposal process to see what we can change to adapt it to where I can get someone's attention who has very limited attention span and make sure I'm still protected, and finding that right balance between the two.
Good deal. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Catch you next time on the Action Item Podcast, and make sure to swing by the website and drop us any questions. We are literally about to do the backlog of questions in just a few moments, so your questions will be down the road a little bit, but we are going to get to all those.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening.